Thors is a Viking renowned for his combat skills, which, along with his partner Thorkell, were fighting in the war. So Thors decided to stop the other enemies while waiting for the reinforcements to arrive. But when the Viking is fighting, an enemy surprises him and drags him into the water. Although he tried to kill him, Thors was able to break free. However, Thors decided to swim away on the spot and not return to his companions. Years after that event, Thors finds himself in Iceland, on a small island to the north. Thors has a family and a new life here. One of his sons, Thorfinn, is listening to Leif's stories along with the other children. The man tells them how he discovered the island of Vinland. Thors and his daughter Ylva are shoveling snow off the roof when the girl falls off the top. When Ylva and her father check the snow, they discover a man who, surprisingly, is still alive. Thors and Ylva carried the body inside with Thors' wife, Helga. The man barely managed to get a few words out but to say that he was an enslaved person belonging to Halfdan, one of the leaders of the northern tribe. In the morning, Halfdan and his men arrive to look for his property, but Thors tells him that he'll buy him for 8 young sheep. Halfdan agrees and leaves the fellowship, and though the man dies on his terms, Thor is glad he freed him. A warship lands on the island looking for Thors, and when the group of Vikings lands, they bow to him. The group, led by Floki, introduces themselves as Jomsvikings, the war group Thors belonged to before he faked his death. Thor ushers Floki into his house to find out why he came since his quest is due. Floki tells him that they're preparing for a war and that his participation is necessary. At first, Thors refuses, but ends up agreeing when Floki threatens to destroy the village. Thorfinn overheard the conversation between Floki and his father. The kid was very proud of his father and even excited to participate in a war. However, Thors doesn't agree to take him as Thorfinn is just a boy. Annoyed, when Thorfinn was playing war with the other children, he goes too far and attacks his friends excessively. Thorfinn was frustrated that he couldn't go to war with his father, so he decided to show his father that he was ready. However, Thor stops him and explains that he faked his death to get rid of the brutal Viking life he had. The next day, the village is preparing to set sail for war. Floki leaves to wait for Thors across the sea to fight the battle. However, Floki arrives looking for Askeladd, the leader of a group of Vikings, and orders him to attack a ship and kill Thors. Thors and the others prepare to go to war while saying goodbye to their families and loved ones. Thor tries to find Thorfinn to bid his farewell, but cannot find him and tells his wife to say goodbye to him on his behalf. Although the townsfolk are worried about the new inexperienced boys who will go to war, Leif comments that Thors won't take them onto the battlefield. Instead, they'll stop in Norway and leave them all there. With everything ready, the group of warriors set sails for the high seas to embark on an adventure that they believe will bring them riches and eternal glory. But, already in the open sea, Thors realizes that Thorfinn had hidden in one of the barrels they carried in their cargo. Thors rebukes him, but now he has no choice but to take him along. The group decides to stop, but Askeladd and his men are waiting for them in the mountains. Thors gets a bad feeling and tells the crew that they should return. However, as they turned around, Askeladd's henchmen on top of the mountains threw a pile of debris to cut off the ships. When the path is locked up, Askeladd shows up with 2 more ships surrounding Thors and his party. Once they were surrounded, Thors had no choice but to fight alone as the others lacked any fighting ability. However, Thors realizes that within the ranks of the enemy, there was a warrior far more capable than the others. He was Bjorn, a mighty warrior who had eaten a berserker mushroom, drastically enhancing his physical abilities. Thors charges at Askeladd's first ship and easily defeats the crew. Bjorn lunges at Thors, and Thors easily defeats him. Askeladd and his group prepare to board Thors' crew's boat, but Thors quickly arrives and prevents them from boarding. Thors realizes that he is outnumbered and won't be able to win the battle. So Thors challenges Askeladd to a duel, telling him that if Askeladd wins, he can kill him and take the others, but if Thors wins, they must retreat. Askeladd accepts, and they begin to fight. Although the duel seems even, Thors manages to defeat Askeladd. Thors doesn't kill him and tells him to accept defeat, but Askeladd doesn't take this and breaks the rules of the duel. As Thors thought of finishing off Askeladd, Bjorn jumps onto the ship with Thors' crew and takes Thorfinn hostage. Thors decides to make a deal with Askeladd so that in exchange for his life, he'll let his son and the others go. Askeladd agrees and gives the orders to execute Thors. When Thors is on his deathbed, he tells Thorfinn that a warrior doesn't need a sword to be strong and bids him farewell. After his father's death, Thorfinn hides on the ship Askeladd's crew stole from Thors' crew. The pirates head to an island and claim the reward for taking down Thors. Reaching land, Thorfinn gets off the ship and begins to walk through the forest in search of something to drink, despite how weak he is. As night falls, Thorfinn watches in horror in the distance as Askeladd's party is pillaging a village on the island. When it's all over, Thorfinn begins searching the different houses for Askeladd with a plan to assassinate him. Thorfinn finds him sleeping and takes a sword to behead him, but after remembering his father, he's unable to do so. The next day, Thorfinn appears in front of Askeladd to challenge him to a duel as his father would, though Askeladd easily defeats him and leaves him to starve. However, Thorfinn manages to get up and returns to the forest to see if he can get something to eat. In the forest, Thorfinn begins to train with the dagger given to him by his father to have any chance of defeating Askeladd. Once trained, Thorfinn challenges Askeladd to a duel again. Although Askeladd defeats him again, he tells Thorfinn that when he becomes a capable warrior, he'll grant him a fight. Thorfinn leaves with Askeladd to continue sailing, and during one of these trips, the group of pirates arrive on an island they were ordered to attack. Unfortunately, when they're attacking the village, Thorfinn is in danger because he gets mistaken for a Danish pirate. One of the guards who protect the town strikes him, and when he's about to kill him, Askeladd saves him and taunts him, saying that he's weak and won't be like his father. Another guard again attacks Thorfinn, but this time he manages to kill him viciously. After this, he knows there's no going back. Nevertheless, Thorfinn continued to go along with the pirates, and as he grew older, he became increasingly skilled in battle. Askeladd and his men plan to attack a town in England, and he orders Thorfinn to be his spy and sends them the signal to attack. Inside the city, Thorfinn fights a bunch of royal guards who leave him badly injured and unconscious on the banks of a river. A woman and her daughter found Thorfinn. They rescue him and healed his wounds. However, Thorfinn went ahead with the plan, though not before telling the woman who cared for him to flee. Askeladd's group decides to attack a French fortress to loot it and get enough money to spend the winter. For this, Askeladd elaborates a plan to ally himself with an army that was also attacking the fortress. Askeladd sends Thorfinn as a messenger with the leader of the attacking army. They offer that they'll help break the defenses, and in exchange, they'll take half the treasure. Thorfinn asks Askeladd when they'll fight again, and Askeladd tells him that if he brings the head of the enemy leader attacking the fortress, he'll give him a new duel. Thorfinn goes to speak with the leader of the attacking troops and proposes the deal. He accepts, and in the morning, they execute the plan. With everything ready, the attacking forces bring down the fortress with the help of the Vikings. In the distance, Thorfinn manages to see the leader he had to kill and quickly launches to finish him off. Askeladd and the others manage to board thanks to Thorfinn distracting the archers trying to kill the leader, and he succeeds in the end. Askeladd and his men ransack the fortress, taking all the loot. Thorfinn shows Askeladd that he accomplished his goal and calls for the duel. Askeladd agrees to fight him once they escape from the fortress. After escaping from France, the group of Vikings returns to their homeland, where they're welcomed as heroes. Askeladd goes directly to negotiate the food and liquor his troops will consume. When the deal is done, Thorfinn arrives to ask Askeladd to keep his promise. Thorfinn duels Askeladd again. As the duel begins, it appears that Thorfinn has the upper hand as his battle experience has made him much more skilled. However, he still can't beat Askeladd because he's too emotionally unstable. Askeladd provokes Thorfinn by speaking ill of his father, so Thorfinn lunges at him in anger and gets easily defeated. At the end of the duel, Thorfinn finds himself on his father's old ship and hallucinates seeing his father again. Thors tells his son always remember that a true warrior doesn't need a sword. Before leaving, Hord, the village's leader's henchwoman, surprises Thorfinn by bringing him food. Hord is sad about being enslaved, so Thorfinn remembers how his father rescued the enslaved man in Iceland and tells Hord about Vinland. On orders from the King of Denmark, the Danish army is trying to invade the British capital for the dominance of England. Although the Danish military has everything to win, the English manage to resist thanks to the help of Thorkell, who joined them, betraying Denmark for money and the thrill of war. The King of Denmark hired the group of Askeladd to be his allies in battle. To get to the bridge where Thorkell was, Askeladd decides to use Thorfinn to confront Thorkell so the others can attack the bridge. They execute the plan, and Thorfinn jumps from the ship to the bridge for the confrontation with Thorkell. At first, the duel seems even thanks to Thorfinn's skill, but Thorkell quickly catches him. Seeing this, Askeladd decides to leave the boy and withdraw his men. Thorfinn, badly injured, manages to escape from Thorkell by throwing himself into the water. The King of Denmark was arguing with Floki about how to penetrate the bridge and defeat the dreaded Thorkell. For this, they decide to send Prince Canute with an army of thousands of men to face the English army. After escaping, Thorfinn rejoined Askeladd's group to recover. As he sleeps, he begins to dream of Thors, who reminds him again that he doesn't need to seek revenge and that it won't make him happy. The next day, Thorfinn wakes up to find Askeladd sitting on top of a hill. They both begin to talk about their life purposes and what Askeladd will do once he grows old. Thorfinn tells him that his only wish is to kill him and that sooner or later he'll accomplish that. Their talk is interrupted by a royal knight who tells them that Thorkell raided the coast where they would meet Prince Canute. Thorkell, along with his group, attacked on a whim of wanting to fight and, not content with this, also took Canute hostage. Askeladd tells the messengers that they'll go, but not before assassinating him, to take on the task of rescuing the prince and taking the ransom reward. Then, Askeladd encourages his group to go against Thorkell and save the prince, telling Bjorn that if they're going to die, they better die fighting. After capturing the prince, Thorkell and his party head back to the fort, where they're ambushed by the party of Ragnar, Prince Canute's protector. They come to rescue the prince, although Thorkell surprisingly gives the prince voluntarily. However, this is done to provoke them later and goad them into a fight. Askeladd and his group are preparing a strategy to save the prince. The plan is to start a forest fire so Thorfinn can camouflage himself in the smoke and rescue the prince. The plan goes perfectly, and Thorfinn manages to find the prince, but Thorkell shows up to fight Thorfinn again. Since the forest was burning faster and faster, Thorkell finally decided to let Thorfinn go with the prince. Arriving with Askeladd, Ragnar makes them promise to take care of the prince at all costs. Askeladd agrees but tells Canute to remove his helmet as he needs to see his face. The prince takes off his helmet, and everyone is surprised by his delicate features. After this, Askeladd sets off to deliver the prince to the king. Askeladd decides to call for reinforcements to defend Canute and return him safe and sound. Unfortunately, to get to where the reinforcements are, the party must march for many days with Thorkell's party behind them. Arriving, the group manages to see only two men. Askeladd gets off his horse to talk to them, and it turns out that one of them is Commander Gratianus. He takes them to Wales so they can hide the prince from Thorkell. Upon arrival, Askeladd discusses with Ragnar how they'll get the prince, whether by water or land. Askeladd decides that it's better to transport it over land so that Thorkell doesn't reach them so quickly and assigns Thorfinn to be the prince's bodyguard. With everything prepared, the warriors set off until they meet two men in the distance who appear to be allies. However, these turn out to be enemies, and more enemies emerge from the mountains, shooting arrows. They defend themselves and prepare for battle. Askeladd orders a ceasefire by his people since he doesn't want any more conflicts. Askeladd, along with Gratianus, go to talk with the two men at the end of the road. These turn out to be messengers from the Kingdom of Wales. Askeladd negotiates with Asser, one of the commanders, to let them pass through Wales without anyone being affected. Although Asser initially seems to refuse, when he learns that Askeladd has Welsh royal blood from his mother, he agrees. Askeladd further tells him that after delivering the prince, he plans to take a political position with the Kingdom of Denmark, to sign a non-aggression treaty against Wales. Asser gives them the condition that they surrender their weapons and pass themselves off as prisoners to facilitate the expedition. After the negotiations, the warriors hand their weapons over and set off. On the way, Prince Canute berates Thorfinn for being so careless and haughty in talking to him. The outburst surprises Ragnar, as he had never seen the prince speak to anyone other than himself. As winter approached, the warriors spent several days marching to get to Gainsborough as quickly as possible. Finally, they decide to change the route, with the danger of passing through England again to avoid winter. However, the snow still traps them while they're running out of provisions to survive the winter. The Vikings decide to loot a nearby village for food. They rampage through everything, looting every house and family in the town. Finally, there's nothing left and only a little girl who manages to escape. She witnesses how the Vikings catch all the civilians in the city and kill them, so they don't give them away to the British government. Thorkell finds himself across the country, disappointed that winter has fallen and the war will cease. However, thanks to the girl who survived the last looting by the Vikings, Thorkell finds out that they're inside the country. Therefore, Thorkell begins his quest to re-kidnap Prince Canute. Along the way, Askeladd notices that someone is following them very quickly. This turns out to be Thorkell's group, and Askeladd decides to hasten their escape. On the other hand, Thorfinn is hunting a rabbit for lunch, and when Ragnar realizes this, he decides to invite Thorfinn to eat with him and the prince. When they're told that a battle is raging on the front lines, Ragnar decides to talk to Askeladd about making a retreat and escaping the other way. When Ragnar is brought to where the battle is taking place, he's killed by Askeladd's men to make the prince stop being so dependent on him and start being an actual leader. Before dying, Ragnar asks to speak with Askeladd and makes him promise to take care of Canute. Also, Ragnar tells him that the prince's real danger is his father, King Sweyn. After Ragnar's death, Prince Canute is shocked and sad that there's no time for a proper burial. Along the way, the group manages to capture an English soldier that they torture so that they can tell how they were found. However, Thanks to the fact that the English army was getting closer, they couldn't get much information from him. Many of Askeladd's men are skeptical of his leadership, as he has made many poor decisions on his journey to return the prince. As a result, many of them decide to desert the group and join Thorkell, without much success as the warrior kills them for being traitors and cowards. Askeladd has a verbal confrontation with the prince. He slaps him, telling him that he should start behaving as a man since Ragnar isn't there to keep protecting him. Following the route to Gainsborough, Askeladd decides to destroy a bridge because this will delay Thorkell. However, his soldiers grow distrustful of him and decide to betray him, surrounding him to attack as Thorkell's army quickly approaches them. The only ones left on Askeladd's side are Thorfinn, Bjorn, and Canute. Being wholly surrounded, Askeladd tells Bjorn and Thorfinn to escape with the prince. Meanwhile, Askeladd stays behind to face his men. Although at first they mediate words to try to avoid death, Askeladd refuses and begins to attack them one by one. Although Thorfinn and the prince escape, several deserters follow suit to try to capture the prince. The deserters manage to damage one of the carriage's horses so that it flips over. However, Thorfinn manages to steal one of his horses, and as Bjorn and the prince fall into the snow, Thorfinn leaves in search of Askeladd. Askeladd was tired and wounded by the battle. Although he was still on his feet, he wouldn't last much longer. Askeladd decides to negotiate so they don't kill him, and his ex-soldiers shoot arrows at his legs so he can't run away. Thorkell's group arrives, and the deserters try to hand over Askeladd to him, though Thorkell doesn't care and kills them. Askeladd is about to be killed, but Thorfinn arrives just in time to save him from Thorkell. The fight between Thorfinn and Thorkell begins and looks pretty even, though Thorfinn still can't do much damage to the Viking. In the middle of the battle, Thorkell tells Thorfinn about his father and tells him that if he wants to know more, he should make him have some more fun. Thorkell and Thorfinn continue to fight. Thorfinn, seeing that he couldn't do much by attacking randomly, begins to hit Thorkell at specific points. Noticing this, Thorkell distracts and manages to confuse Thorfinn. When he has the upper hand, Thorkell takes the opportunity to kick him, sending him far into the snow. On the other side of the forest, Bjorn, who survived the fall of the carriage, was fighting the warriors that followed them. Bjorn ingests a berserker mushroom and goes on a rampage, taking out many enemies single-handedly. While this was happening, Prince Canute was unconscious, and he sees Ragnar for the last time in his dreams, and there he could say goodbye to him. Upon waking up, Canute manages to get Bjorn out of the trance he was in and goes to stop Thorkell and the English army. After the attack, Thorkell approaches Thorfinn, who wakes up to continue fighting. But the younger Viking had broken his arm and could no longer fight well. Seeing this, Thorkell decides to wait for him so that he can recover and they can continue fighting fairly. While giving him time to recover, Thorkell begins to tell him about his father's past and how Thors escaped with Helga. Askeladd was healing Thorfinn and told him how to defeat Thorkell. When Thorfinn manages to recover, he begins to fight Thorkell again. This time, Thorfinn, with the help of Askeladd, sets a trap for Thorkell. In this way, Thorfinn manages to attack Thorkell's weak point and leave him without an eye. But when he was about to kill him, Thorkell's men attacked Thorfinn. Though his men saved him, Thorkell was upset as he felt disgraced. The Viking orders his men to let Thorfinn and Askeladd go, as he promised to do so if he lost. Canute arrives showing a change of personality, demonstrating a leader's characteristics. Canute talks to Thorkell and convinces him to join in the quest to go to Gainsborough to kill the king and end the war. On their arrival at Gainsborough, the men are greeted by Floki, who lets the warriors pass without conflict. Canute tells Floki to tell the king that he wants an audience with him soon. Already in the city, Canute, Askeladd, and Thorkell plan how to overthrow the king and dedicate themselves to getting allies. Night falls, and Canute, Askeladd, and Thorfinn appear in an audience with the king, but they're ambushed. However, Canute decides to continue since he's confident that nothing will happen to them. Canute and the king talk, and the king offers him a life in peace away from the kingdom, or his other option is death. The king tells him that he used to be like Canute, but the crown's power corrupts good leaders. Canute doesn't accept what his father proposes and proposes a negotiation deal. The king takes the terms, and, in addition, the prince will be rewarded for his actions in the war. Canute later asks Askeladd how he plans to kill the king, and Askeladd replies that although it won't be easy, he has a plan to do it. Then, in another part of the town, Leif shows up, since he's been searching for Thorfinn for the past few years to bring him home back to Iceland. After talking with the king, Askeladd plans to turn everyone against the king to start the revolution. For this, he makes an assassin attack the prince while making a public appearance. The killer shoots an arrow that manages to hit the prince, but Thorfinn hunts down the assassin and kills him. After Thorfinn kills the assassin, he meets Leif, who hugs him and tells him to come home because his mother is very ill. However, Thorfinn ignores him and leaves. After the shot, everyone realized that it wasn't the actual prince, but a double. Askeladd plans this so that people would think that the king was attempting his son's life. Then, the group planned the strategy for the meeting with the king the next day. There, Askeladd begins to think that Ragnar's brother is a spy and sends Thorfinn to keep an eye on him. Unfortunately, Thorfinn finds out that he's indeed a spy and fed misinformation to confuse the king. After all this, Askeladd finally gave Thorfinn the long-awaited duel. However, he first duels against Bjorn, who was severely injured from the last fight. The duel is quick, and Askeladd finishes it off with a blow to send off his only friend with honor. After having defeated Bjorn, Askeladd confronts Thorfinn. Although Thorfinn is hesitant to attack Askeladd, Askeladd provokes him, and, without much thought, Thorfinn launches himself at him. Askeladd quickly stops him with his hands and manages to knock him unconscious. Canute, who was witnessing the duel, tells Askeladd to stop. Askeladd tells Thorfinn that he'll never defeat him since anger clouds him every time he faces him. That's why he'll lose against him every time. Then, Askeladd sits down and tells Thorfinn and Canute how to kill someone you despise. He tells them the story of how he murdered his father, who was a war hero. He tells them the story of his mother and the meaning of the name Askeladd. After this, the group leaves with Bjorn's body for a proper burial. Canute asks why he's the one chosen to be king and not Askeladd himself. He tells him, just by looking at his face you can see that he'll be an excellent ruler. However, Askeladd also tells him that neither he nor King Sweyn is worthy of claiming the throne, as he is just a simple Viking himself. Thorfinn was severely wounded after the duel with Askeladd, and, in a moment of delirium, thinks he sees Askeladd passing by and follows him. However, it was just a stranger passing by who, seeing Thorfinn bothering him, decided to attack him. Thorfinn beats him and 3 other guys and is thrown in jail for disturbing the peace. In the audience, the king begins to bestow many rewards on the heroes of the last war. First, the king announces that he'll give Mercia, one of the wealthiest nations in England, to Canute to be ruler. The announcement about Mercia makes Askeladd happy as everything is going as he had planned. However, the king also announces to attack Wales in the spring. This statement upsets Askeladd, and Floki notices it and tells the king. In prison, Thorfinn is visited by Leif, who tells him about Vinland and that if he returns with him to Iceland, they'll search for Vinland together and have great adventures. Thorfinn agrees and decides to leave with Leif. Meanwhile, Askeladd is pondering how to avoid the attack on Wales but is interrupted by the king. As Askeladd goes to collect his reward, the king tells him that if he chooses to kill Canute, he'll stop the attack on Wales. He also tells him that he has investigated him and knows that his mother was enslaved. After hearing this, Askeladd goes into a rage and insults the king, causing the guards to turn against the Viking. Still, before the guards attack him, Askeladd beheads the king. Once he assassinates the king, Askeladd looks at the prince as a sign that the job is done. Canute orders Askeladd be assassinated, and the guards charge at the warrior, though none of them are a match for him. Canute, who knew it was all part of Askeladd's plan, tells Thorkell to deal the final blow on Askeladd. However, Thorkell refuses and tells him to do it himself as it's his problem now. Across town, Thorfinn was ready to go to Iceland, but for a moment, he remembers that his purpose in life is to kill the men who killed his father, and runs to finish Askeladd. Just as Thorfinn arrives, Askeladd finds himself fighting Floki. Thorfinn's arrival distracts Askeladd, and Canute delivers the final blow. Askeladd falls, and before he dies, tells Thorfinn to go on with his life, go far beyond his father and become a true warrior. Canute assumes himself to be the new king and calls off the attack on Wales. Thorfinn tries to attack Canute in revenge, but the guards stop him and take him away for trying to assassinate the new king of Denmark. And that was Vinland Saga Season 1 recap. If you enjoyed this recap, remember to hit the sub, click the like button, and comment down below to let me know what you think of the series. I'll see you on the next video.